Okay, looks like we're live. Hold on, let's get it on this side.
Hello.
Hello, just waiting for the connection. Oh, nice, we did it. We're live. How's everyone
Yay.
doing?
Good. Good morning. Or good morning to you, Cynthia.
Yeah, good morning to you all. Oh, yeah, good morning to me. We are kind of all over the world right now, which is really exciting. Yeah, so we are thrilled to be able to provide this panel discussion for everyone who's watching. We'll just kind of get it kicked off and see where the conversation takes us. Hopefully, this will be a really fun, organic discussion. And we were just hoping that in celebration of Women's Month, to gather a bunch of female F&B specialists in unique niches. And we're here to talk about the state of the food and beverage industry, all of your own experiences in your individual niche and the greater industry at large, and how each sector is progressing. So everyone who's watching, thank you for joining us. If you're watching on the recording, thanks for popping in. And yeah, I'm just going to kick it off and introduce everyone. We've got a really great panel today. So first we've got Shunan Tang of Tea Drunk. Shunan, I want to give a wave. Hey. So Shunan's the founder and CEO of Tea Drunk, which is a New York-based tea company that's known as a destination for those seeking exceptional tea and tea knowledge. She's known for her relentless in the field pursuit of tea and her work preserving Chinese tea traditions. She's traveled to historic mountains in China every year to harvest and make tea alongside heritage tea farmers, and is an avid, amazing educator on tea and has spoken on the subject matters at many companies and institutions, including Yale, Christie's, Van Cleef, World Tea Expo, Stony Brook, the list goes on. She is also the TED educator of the TED Ed lesson, The History of Tea, which I'll link the history of tea down below after we're done. It's a really, really great TED Talk. Then we've got Carol Johnson. Carol is part of Monger's Palate. Monger's Palate's an artisanal cheese shop in Greenpoint, Brooklyn that's been serving cheese and specialty foods to the neighborhood since 2017. Monger's Palate focuses on supporting small, local, and international cheesemaker and providing a warm environment to educate about good cheeses. And in addition to cheese, Monger's Palate offers catering, tasting classes, and summer cheesemaking courses in the city. And then we've got Coffee Project. We've got Sum and Kaylina. So they're the founders of Coffee Project. Founded it in 2015 in New York. It started as a mom and pop coffee shop in the East Village, but later evolved into a full-fledged coffee company with multiple retail locations, providing roasting, training, education support, and tech support. They also run the only specialty coffee association certified coffee training center in New York, which is actually, that's huge. That's really cool. So Sum currently serves as the CEO, while Kaylina serves as the director of education for the company. And then last but not least, we've got Tammy. Hi, Tammy.
Hello.
So Tammy is the co-founder of Lazy Sundays, a New York City-based cafe chain specializing in bubble tea and Korean-shaped ices. She created Lazy Sundays with the hopes of it being a sweet refuge for everyone's busy day. And having grown up in Korea, New Zealand, Canada, and the United States, she draws her inspiration for Lazy Sundays menu from a nostalgic and comforting flavors of her childhood, as well as new favorite discoveries along the way. And they just opened a new location in Dumbo recently, which is awesome. It's so much larger. There's lots of space. It's a really great neighborhood. Yeah, so welcome everyone. Hey.
Hi. Thanks for the intro.
Yeah, this is my quick speed intro to get everyone on board. So let's kick it off. So while, we're all in unique niches in food and beverage, right? But at the end of the day, we're all foodies. We wouldn't be doing what we're doing if we didn't love food as, a whole. So we can kind of get going with that commonality. So I wanted to ask you guys what the ideal food experience for you personally is. Carol, you want to start us off with this one?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I actually started in kitchens cooking and then kind of ended up in cheese. So for me, the ideal experience is just having a really large meal with people. So every year for the past 6 years, I've been doing a big meal on Easter where we like roast a whole animal and everyone comes and enjoys that.
Wow, fun.
So that kind of thing where you're just a lot of people in a really communal eating setting, like no money is exchanged, you're just enjoying each other's presence. That's kind of my ideal food situation.
Easter's coming up. What are you cooking for this year? What is your big animal of the year?
I went through all of the big animals and I got to pig and I was like, what's next? Like horse. So I'm going down and we're doing duck. So I'm doing a lot of different preparations of duck and I'm really excited about that.
Amazing.
That's my favorite.
I get invited.
Yeah, you're all invited. You might have to do duck, but you're all invited.
All right.
I think I'm pretty similar to Carol. I feel like I love food, of course, but I think it's always more the company and like the atmosphere than like the food itself. So, I think like the ideal like meal for me is just to have like a bunch of like my close friends and family together, have them over and just like cook a giant meal and just have and like enjoy each other's company. I think that's always my favorite. Something easy.
I think mine's also very similar to Terry's. It's about the company. I absolutely agree, but maybe minus the cooking part. Maybe not eating out. We don't have to do the cleaning afterwards.
Fair.
Yeah, we don't talk about, but when we get on an evening, like company, we like when the environment is inviting, everyone is happy, and I like experiencing like new things. Like it could be, I don't know, a new cuisine, a new way of eating, hiding from the park. So
Cool. Yeah, I think like I pretty much like concur to what everyone already said. If one thing I had to add on is there's something about eating outside, especially just outdoors. I don't know, on grass, maybe even by water. And I love a big either like a barbecue kind of setup where everyone is just kind of gathering around. It can be sitting, it can be standing and eating and drinking, chatting, with dogs running around, and I don't know. It's to me.
I love that you have a full picture. It's a very specific place.
Especially, I think now living in New York City, these kind of experience, just space limitation wise, has become more and more precious. But every time when I do get to have a meal in that kind of setup again, it always nostalgic, but also just, I wish that moment can live forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great commonality for all of us to have discussed different aspects of the experience of it. I think that's a big part of choosing niches and choosing kind of, how you're presenting an experience of a food on a deeper level. But at the end of the day, it's community, right? It's like all getting together. It's sharing what we know. It's sharing what we love. It's sharing who we love. And I think that's actually a great lead into, kind of our Women's Month idea here is these experiential things that we have. How do we experience them as women and also as like female-led companies? So I'll shoot this over to you ladies with coffee projects. What role do women play in the production of coffee? Is there like a classic stereotypical role for women? Do you see any progress in inclusivity? You want to give us a little knowledge on the coffee aspect of women?
you want to start?
Yeah, so women play a very important role in coffee from the very beginning, from production, farming coffee to the completion of it, like of the product. But I think in coffee, unfortunately, women don't get a lot of recognition, even in production itself, even in farming itself. So as a company, we tried our best. Like for example, like we tried to feature women producers in our coffee, and we highlight them. Like whenever we sell the coffee, we make sure that people understand, hey, this farm specifically, like everything was produced by women. I think do we have some coffee coming in also?
Yeah.
That is
Every year.
Oh, we are having
Wait,
a
so
hard
can
time
you turn
hearing
your,
you.
can you turn your mic? Thanks.
Every year we make conscious effort to actually make sure that we have coffees that are produced by women, and put a name onto the coffee. And sometimes if we have a chance, we actually show face of this woman who plants this coffee and grow and send it over to us. And that's just the production side of things. And when you're talking about other things, right now, to be honest, I think we see a lot more women starting coming in the specialty coffee industry, especially with the roasting part of thing. So my goal every year is to see how I can utilize my skills to actually help more women who are interested to learn how to roast coffee, because it's such a male dominated industry where you really need strength, you need a lot of like things that could make you do good. So this year, or actually this year is our second year running this. We have a women roaster scholarship for all self-identified women, non-binary, to actually apply and see how we as a company can pass down our knowledge and hopefully have more people join me in roasting coffee that is
It's awesome.
not.
That's awesome. If you could,
really
after
cool.
this, yeah, it's really cool. Will you send me the link to the application so I can add it to the bottom of the live chat here? So just in case if anyone watching the recording wants to apply, I think that's an amazing opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like to sum up once what Sam was saying, there's a lot of gatekeeping. You see like, like lower level job skills that is fulfilled by women, but then when it comes to like completing the end product, roasting and being able to sell it at a higher pricing, there's not a lot of women roaster out there. So we as a company, as an education facility, that's what we're trying to that's the barrier that we're trying to break. Yeah.
Right. Super cool. Well, thank you guys for doing that. I think it's a really big thing, especially in the coffee world. Yeah.
Awesome.
Do you want to take it over to tea?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, people always compare coffee and tea together. I think one of the component that's very similar between coffee and tea is definitely there's the primary processing and then the later process that oftentimes involves roasting. So some I'm very excited, like or inspired by your idea of having scholarship to promote women who want to get more involved in the production side of the product. It's very similar in the tea world, especially tea. I'm speaking specifically about Chinese tea. A lot of the farms we work with, they are in the unit of family, and usually you do see the women take on the role of picking the tea, selling the tea, and while men take on the more laborious job, such as processing the tea, roasting. But at the end of the day, people do recognize these steps with production, such as making the tea, processing the tea, as more skilled job, and then things like picking the tea, selling the tea as less skilled works. So this has caused the more recognized jobs all very male dominant. And when people feature a master tea maker, you very rarely see a female. And this also goes into the old narrative that men do labor works and the women do less labor works. And in a way, you can say that, oh, it's to for the benefit of the female, but at the same time, it also eliminates the opportunity for any, because this is really individual's decision, right? It really eliminates any individual girl, woman's dream to also want to do such skilled, and you can even say labor intensive jobs, right? So this is where opportunity it become very important, because it's not supposed to be a decision that's made by a group or a culture. It's supposed to be individuals decision, depends on this individual's ambition. So at Tea Drunk, we also try to highlight the works of female producer, even though there are very few of them. And they do range a pretty wide age group as well. And we're also hoping that in the near future, we can bring some of the production steps of tea to, once the tea product finish the primary processing, become the raw tea, is relatively stable. That means we can do some of the finishing steps here remotely, such as in the US, in New York, and then hopefully that can get even a wider population get involved in the production of tea, and also hopefully the opportunity will be equal to everyone, men or women, who have the ambition to become a skilled person in that gets involved in the production of tea.
That's really cool. Shannon, do you see a trend of maybe younger people getting involved? Like more diverse, younger people?
Yeah, that's also one of the crisis, I would say, in the Chinese tea world right now, is that overall the population is aging, and farming age is even aging more severely. And in the tea world, we definitely see more and more young people who have either studied or worked in cities, and they don't want to go back to the farming life. And so some of the family skills and lineage might have, being lost, or oftentimes young people just don't want to learn anymore because it's such a hard job. This is where I think the consumers can help. What I have seen is that tea region that have their tea being highly recognized, and basically means when the family can make lots of money with tea, the young people will have more desire, more motivation to get involved in making the tea. And in regions that are very traditional, they have very traditional, have great method and techniques of processing tea. But if their teas are not being recognized by nowadays consumer, then you definitely see the young people no longer want to go back to that life. It's almost like there's no reward for them. Why do I have to work so much harder as farming it, and making tea is such a hard job without having recognition either through fame or status or money. And this is part of what Tea Drunk is doing. We want to bring people teas more based on the tradition, and then the processing techniques involved with the tea, and not so much being interfered by the market. We try to educate the market so those teas get recognized.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah. What about the cheese world? Can we talk about ladies in cheese? Yeah.
There's a lot of women in cheese, and that's really exciting. I think it depends. So historically, it was, if we're talking about, say, European cheese, every I would say continent has a different tradition in terms of where women are placed. In European cheese making, it was traditionally the men were the herdsmen and the women were the cheese makers, because the men had that laborious job of going with the animals out and sleeping out with the animals all day, and then bringing them back, and maybe the women would milk them and make the cheese. I think in South America, it's more traditional that the woman, kind of being the secret head of the house, would be making all of the food and be making the cheese and kind of running a creamery. In the US, where our cheese making traditions are so much newer, and really what brought cheese making to the US, like artisanal cheese making, was women in the late 60s, early 70s. And that's continued. A lot of the cheesemakers I know and carry in the US are women, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Europe still has some catching up to do, I think, because their techniques are maybe a little more labor intensive than the ones we use in the US to make smaller cheeses. But the barrier now for us, especially in the US making cheese, is that it just doesn't make a living. It's really hard, especially as a woman, if you want to have a family and to have other pursuits, to be a cheesemaker and run a farm and do those things as well and make a living doing it. So I think that's the biggest issue we're up against now. It's the cost of things, and then how do you do the thing you love and make money doing it.
The golden
I think
question.
for us in kind of more like the cafe industry, I see a lot more like female founders starting new and exciting like cookies or kind of like packaged products with chips or even alternative milk products. So one of the alternative milks that we carry is a pistachio milk called Tash. And historically, you know, like things like Oatly or even just kind of like dairy milk, it was like a very male dominated field. But Tash is founded by a female founder, Roxana, and it's just like this amazing, like very like subtle tasting pistachio milk, which, you know, sometimes when it's like pistachio flavor is a little bit artificial, it can be overpowering, but it almost tastes like you're just kind of like eating like a handful of pistachio nuts. And we also have a few different brands that we work with. So there's like an amazing shortbread manufacturer called Cafe Warshawski, also founded by a female baker, Mai, and that's amazing. We also have a bottled like Korean kind of like a cinnamon jujube digestives called Sujongga, and Hannah started her company Harmi in 2021 or so, and it's been really amazing to work with all these like female founders, kind of starting their own product that they're really passionate about.
Yeah, I love to hear it. It's so great that there's so many ways for you guys, especially in that cafe space, to work with so many different makers that make kind of all these different unique, progressive, changing products. It's amazing. Yeah. My next question I want to talk to you guys about is about, so we're all in our own niches, right? So how we're all seeing changes within our niches. I think, Tammy, maybe we'll let you start with this. Are there any changes that you see in your sector? Any new trends on the horizon?
So I think a big thing I see actually in kind of like the Korean cafe culture, whether it's like based in New York or even in Korea, I see kind of a lot of celebration for like flavors that people kind of grew up with. So things like that we have on our menu as an example, like our Indomie cereal milk, or even like our black sesame latte that we had over the Lunar New Year special. I think, you know, even like 10 years ago, I feel like these are flavors that are a little bit more ignored because it's something that is very traditionally Korean or Asian, because it's something that, you know, your like grandma grew up eating and it's like very like traditional. It's not as like exciting, but I feel like now in the past like 5 years, I feel like these flavors are really being celebrated and being reinterpreted more modernly. So one other example that like I loved seeing when I was in Korea was use of mugwort. And this is also like a very odd herb that's not necessarily like super tasty to a lot of people. When I was young, I hated it. It's used in a lot of like rice cakes or some desserts, or you can even cook rice with it, and it has this like really nice, almost like sagey note to it. But you know, when you're young, you just kind of like ignore it. It's like, what is this weird thing?
It's not sweet enough. You're out.
No, but now you know, we're making dessert with it. We're making like a bubble tea drink with it, or like a latte with it. So celebrating these like flavors that are a little bit more like traditional and kind of like homey feeling has been like really amazing to me and like unique. And I love seeing, and I think you know, you kind of mentioned before that I kind of pull my inspiration from the flavors that I grew up with. And I think it's been really exciting to see this kind of across the cafe industry.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I have, I'll never forget when I first started Shudan, I was working at the tea house in New York, and we were talking about like tea flavors and what we were tasting and, you know, the notes that we were pulling. And there were one or two things where she has references to where like, I don't have those taste references, like bamboo shoots or, you know, like ube or different aspects. So it's like there's certain aspects where it's like it's just culturally you don't have that brain palette or the nostalgia for it. And I think I even noticed in the past maybe 5 or 6 years a lot of a lot of cafes and a lot of places that I go to are reintroducing these things that were nostalgic for people all over the world, where, yeah, maybe, you know, in New York or in Los Angeles, you wouldn't have had the opportunity to even taste them before. So it's been a really fun exploration. I think I always grab things off menus that I'm like, oh, I've never had that before. Like, that's cool. So I think it's really cool to see that trend going. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like people are like not shy about trying new things and asking about what's unfamiliar on the menu. Like I mentioned our Indomie or cereal Indomie milk before, which is made with soybean powder, and it almost kind of tastes like how, you know, your cereal milk tastes after you finish eating all your cereal. And when we're naming it, we were kind of like a little bit concerned because I wanted it to, well, thought about naming it just Indomie milk, but then I thought it's such a or unfamiliar word unless you're Korean. So I kind of added the cereal Indomie as something that can be a little bit more familiar for people that are not familiar with the word. But I feel like I almost didn't have to add to it because people are not shy about asking.
That's great.
And yeah, they love discovering new flavors.
I feel like being in New York helps too, right?
Yeah.
I know. This is where people want to experiment things.
Yeah, lots of experimenting, lots of new things. Yeah. Is there any trends that you guys are seeing in coffee as far as like the way that your niche is growing and changing that's exciting to you?
Processing, I think. So in specialty coffee, back then we always talk about the way we process coffee, being washed or natural or like honey process, right? So this is like in depth, like you ferment the coffee cherry together with the pulp or without the pulp. That's technically the term. But now people are getting so creative with like fermentation that a lot of new things are being added to it, or like adapting ways to like ferment coffee just like how they would do wine. So terms like carbonic maceration, anaerobic fermentation. So all these are new terms, and coffee that comes out from it is actually pretty funky. I want to use the word funky, but it's not negative. Like nothing.
No,
negative.
It's a positive. It's definitely a positive.
Yes,
yeah, I've had some of those coffees, and you're just like, it's fun. It's like, yeah, it's funky. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I think it's just making just like for me, it's a little mind blowing. It's like, for example, the other day I tried a coffee. So the varietal is Java, and what they did was just yeast fermentation, right? So whatever yeast that they're using could be local yeast or like yeast from a different product during fermentation. And by the time I finished roasting it and sampling it, my coffee tastes like an orange Milkies.
Wow.
And it tastes like chocolate milk. And there's no additional additives to it. So that makes me feel like there's so much more in the coffee world that we can actually explore. And I think we will all have a fun time.
Yeah. And I think that brings it back to also that like that idea that we started with that it's all an experience. Like when you're able to pull, I think coffee is one thing where people have this idea where you say coffee, they're like, it tastes like this, right? But I think with the way that you're talking about the progression, it's almost like you don't necessarily have a one thought of what coffee should taste like, because there's so much different varieties in the new processing, and providing those new experiences for people is an exciting frontier.
Can I ask, do you find that hard to get your customers to break out of the idea that this is how I grew up having coffee? It has these roasted notes, and like I don't want different wild flavors in my coffee when I experience it, but you're really excited to share it.
I thought initially there could be some trouble trying to introduce this, but I realized also being in New York City, maybe people are just a little bit more open-minded to try coffees that doesn't taste like coffee anymore.
I'm very excited. This is exciting.
So we do a lot of classes about tasting, and we always do comparison with coffee that is like of different roast style, because the darker you roast, the more you will taste like a coffee that brings it back nostalgic, like how do I drink it with my grandmother and things like that. So when we present something from Kenya, fully washed,
kind of light roast, and when they drink it and they tell me this tastes like tomato and savory, and when they finish the cupping class or the tasting class, to them they are more open-minded to try different types of coffee. It just feels like it's part of education. It's also part of how we want to tell people like be open-minded, because coffee is a cherry, it's a fruit, it should taste like that.
Yeah.
That's just my point.
Yeah.
I also think like but I also think like when we do the education part, like the tasting, because some's a curator, which is kind of similar to like a sommelier, but in the coffee world. So she's licensed to talk about that. However, like when we do classes, it's always we try to make it very relatable, and then we try to make people feel like there's really no right or wrong way of drinking coffee. There's no right or wrong way of like enjoying something. But if like people like the traditional like dark roast, smoky profile with milk with sugar, absolutely fine. Like nothing wrong with that. But it's just like, hey, this is a new opportunity for you to try something that is different. And then what do you think? And you're gonna get people who go like, oh no. And you're gonna get people that goes like, oh, this is amazing. So it's just, for us, it's just like really just like trial and error. But oftentimes, it creates that conversation to an opportunity to educate our customers, our consumers, that hey, it could be a little different from what we traditionally know. How's the cheese will like?
I mean, we have a lot of similarities. Like we don't have a sommelier level. We kind of have a sommelier level certification in the U.S. where you can educate yourself as a cheese professional. And part of that now is spinning off is what we call a sensory exam. So you can get certified in sensory cheese analysis in the same way you would with like tea or coffee or beverages. So it's really exciting for me to hear about new flavors like that, or new ways of experiencing something that you think you're familiar with. Because in the cheese world, I think is a very small body of knowledge for the customers. And even though in New York, people are really excited to try new things, their only reference for a lot of cheeses is like cheddar, Gouda, Parmesan, or Reggiano. And so when I give them a cheese that tastes like thistles, or like it has bitter aftertaste, they're like, what? This is not what I expected. And it's exciting to get them to try new things, but also a little hard to push them into accepting that cheese can be a lot of other things besides what you grew up eating. So that's actually the most fun part of my job is like tasting and then figuring out how to translate what I taste to the customer without alienating them, because I can say
that is also the most fun part of our job.
Yes.
We finish roasting, we cook, and then we put them down on notes, and then we say, hey, it's coffee that tastes like this.
Yeah. It's sometimes I say a word and I get like a blank expression, and I'm like, okay, we didn't maybe grow up eating the same things. So how can I explain this in a way that doesn't make you feel like I'm trying to like be smarter than you? That's the fun part.
Yeah, I like that you guys both touched on the importance of education, because for the tea world, it's basically the same thing. And I think like tea, especially the teas that we do, which are traditional Chinese tea, it remains a very foreign product and concept to our customer base here in the U.S. And there's so much stereotypes about tea, right? Tea being feminine, being must have wellness properties, and being a hot beverage, all of those things. But and also the taste of tea too. Oftentimes people think green tea should taste like this, oolong should taste like that. But very similar to wine, to coffee, and it's really a combination of the locations. You're supposed to taste the unique characters that the land gives the tea, and then the cultivar, the specific kind of tea plant, and then also how you actually process the tea depends on the fermentation level. Is it enzymatic? Is it microbial? And the aging and all of that. So in the tea world, we definitely constantly kind of fighting with some pseudo concepts that the market has, but not really make any sense from a tea production perspective. But at the same time, we try to break the barrier and educate consumer of the possibility of the taste of tea. I think having people recognizing the possibility of the flavor this product can yield is so important. Oftentimes when I teach tea classes, when I first touch on basically what is tea and why tea, I always say that, well, think about it, tea is just a bitter leafy green. And we have many bitter leafy greens that we interact with every day. Like, arugula, you can even say spinach is kind of like bitter leafy green. But why are we not drinking arugula or spinach? Or maybe somewhere in the world people do. We have elevated tea to such a sophisticated drink is because it's a compound and enzyme rich plant, and that's what makes it to have so much possibilities of flavors. And so yeah, so part of what we want to do is to it's a lot of education, but education is definitely a part of work I enjoy so much of, maybe because I can then talk, and then and then because teaching others oftentimes is also, like Carol said, is almost a way to help me explore my own knowledge base as well. Because in my way, try to connect with the students and also knowing and then with them asking me questions and flavor notes that make sense to me or doesn't make sense to me, help me to find my knowledge base so I can then share information better to the audience so it makes more sense. Yeah. And in the tea world, new trends, I think one is I'm definitely seeing tea getting more and more involved in on the beverage menu for fine dining. So tea either as a standalone option because it's a very terroir-driven beverage, or tea being incorporated into mocktail or cocktail. Secondly is that tea, this is like the lump into a greater trend going on, which is the ready-to-drink beverages. So higher end, better quality tea getting involved in ready-to-drink. So it's not just for like Lipton. Like most of bottled tea now, I cannot say that so much about their quality, but we're definitely seeing a trend going with a higher end tea. And my own ambition, obviously, is to bring the production of tea a little closer to the U.S., closer here to the consumers. So hopefully that'll happen soon.
I would love to see that. Like listening to talk, like I want to go attend your tea class.
Yes, please come. Yeah, I mean we need to do a tour. After Actually, I've been to Tammy's. I've been to Coffee Project. I haven't been to Carol's, but we have done events together. So I've tasted your cheese. So we should all like get together as a group and doing a tour though.
That'd be really fun.
Yeah.
We can I'll make a little map too, a little New York map. If anyone who's watching or watches the recording wants to do their own little day tour of all the specialty places in New York and hit all you guys, I think it would be really fun.
That would be fun.
Yeah, I do think what you guys are all talking about the way that education is such a big part of what you do speaks so loudly to everyone working in such a niche of their business, and that's how we share what we love, right? It's like by sharing what you know with somebody else who then can share something else that they know. Like one of my favorite things is sitting in a coffee shop and being able to talk to someone or any cafe and talk to the barista about like the coffees that they're having. And then I can talk about like these teas that I love, and like we can nerd out on the same level. And I think the sharing that is such a big part, back to like, the heart of it all, what we were talking about before, and the experience of it. It's such a really cool aspect.
And I think that's a really fun part of also kind of like Lazy Sundays or like other cafes. I feel like the team really knows the product really well. So I kind of like see our team giving suggestions to our customers where like some things are like not necessarily on our menu, but they're like, I do this for my drink and it's really delicious. You want to try this? And it's always like a fun conversation. And it's always kind of like a really nice way to build your community and just kind of like get to know
Yeah.
someone a little bit better.
And those spaces are really where that like thrives, you know, being able to go to a place and have those conversations. And even if it's just stopping by for an afternoon drink or, you know, like a pick me up boba or a coffee, like having those little interactions where you're able to talk about these things and learn. Yeah, it's such a big part of, I guess I'm talking from personal experience too, like enriching the day, like, you know, that's what enriches our day.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like you spend a bulk of your day just like being busy, being involved in other things, and it's kind of like your little break from your day. You get to have like a little bit of caffeine, you get to have a little bit of sugar, you get to have some cheese or tea,
and
and I feel like
new.
it just, it's a nice spot in your day. It's a like nice little break.
Yeah, last time when I went to Lazy Sundays, we were doing experiments with Tea Drunk's teas, and two things I've learned. One is that first of all, I think the drinks that you guys create are also like visually very uplifting. It's people drink to appreciate. Like you wanna take a picture of it and you want to drink it. And then secondly is I had no idea that just tiny bit of change in the ingredient can do so much of the texture of the ice. So I remember we added just a tiny bit of sugar to the snow, the ice snow, and then it just completely changed how it tastes and how it felt in the mouth. That was a great experiment. And different recipes that you guys have all deal with the different textures the snow creates, even though it's just and you can even see it's different.
You can see it, and it's almost like a quarter of an ounce, and even that little bit, you can see a huge difference in how the crystal forms in ice. And it's something that I like never really thought about when I was kind of like starting to think about bingsu, but like the fat content and the sugar content, it just makes a huge difference. It's almost kind of like going back to like middle school and high school and doing like science experiments in class. It was really fun, but yeah, really even that like tiny bit of sugar or tiny bit of salt makes like a huge difference, and also like taste as well. Like it just brought up so much like notes of the tea that Shinam brought, and it was just really fun experimenting.
Yeah, I remember there was like this one we grinded our green tea, and then it's just green tea shaved ice with a tiny bit of sugar, and it came out to taste like matcha ice cream, but there was no cream in there whatsoever.
No cream. It just tea
and I want to get in on this experimenting. I want to try all these things. That sounds delicious.
It's really fun, and everyone's welcome to join our next R&D session.
Awesome. Our next question. So I think it's easy for all of us, to identify. I don't know everyone's backstories on how they identified they were really interested in food and beverage. But I think it's something that it's kind of, you just know that it's something that you love. And so I was hoping that you guys could go around and maybe give a piece of advice to someone who's younger, and maybe a younger woman who's looking to find their niche in specialty industry. If you guys have any wise words of wisdom, I'm sure that there are some people out there who would love the mentorship. Anyone want to start us off?
This is hard.
This is a hard one.
Well, my general idea for people who want to start their business, or in general, if they want to do anything in life, it might sound so cliche, but really just do it. Like the first step is so important, because from my own experience and my deep conversation with people who are close to me, when a person is afraid to have an idea of having their own business or starting on something that's unique and exciting, oftentimes is we just imagine all these problems we could have run into, and we're afraid we don't have prior experience to resolve these issues and problems. So we're like, oh, what if this happened? What if that? And all of those things. But in my own experiences, and I have pivoted my life multiple times, and I'm pretty old now. But anyway, so in my experience, a lot of the problems that you think might happen might not happen. And granted, there are problems that you didn't think of that might happen. But the most important thing why we need to just start doing the first step is to actually actualize the problem, right? So instead of wasting energy and mental power of things that might or might not happen, if you start doing it, you have real problem to resolve, and you just have to trust yourself. If there is a real problem there, you will have the ability to resolve that one real problem. And then guess what? After that one problem go away, there's going to be another problem, but then you will still have the ability to resolve the other problem. So it's the once you're actually on the journey, you're in motion, then you can knock out all the obstacles. But without being on the journey, everything is just in here. And yeah, that's when things cannot happen. And then people will say, oh, I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that. It's impossible. But once you start doing it, and along the way you gain so much confidence, you know that, oh my God, everything is possible. So that's my general. Yeah.
I need more Shunan in my life.
Well, you're already there.
I feel like, but like I overthink everything, and I'm a big worrier. But I do agree with Shunan. Like once you do it, like everything works out, and like you can figure it out along the way, even if you don't have experience. I feel like you find the way, but like until you start, I feel like there's just a lot of things just up here.
Right.
It's hard, but I completely agree with you.
Okay.
I didn't know coming into a small business, I kind of never thought I would actually be able to have a business because it was so financially and like difficult and like a mountain to climb that I never thought I'd climb. And I didn't know when I was younger that I could just ask people like, what do you think about this? Or how do you do this? I thought you had to like do it all and figure it out all yourself. And it's been really hard for me to learn that. And I think super useful more and more lately because I know that I'm an expert at what I do. So it's okay if I ask people, it doesn't make me less of an expert at what I care about.
Right.
Yeah. I also completely agree with Carol. I feel like I had like an interview for also Women's Month for a different magazine, but they had like a very similar question, and that's exactly kind of something that I said because I'm an only child, and I started living away from my parents in the early age, so I was so used to doing everything on my own, and you kind of like forget that you can ask other people for help, or even just like you might think someone's like completely like not in the know about what you're trying to figure out, but like you never know, like they might have someone that they know they can like connect you, and like there's just always like synergy that happens. And I think sometimes it's also like better to get it out of your head so you can also listen to other people's opinions, and I think that's something that I like learned along the way, and like I think also like later along the way, and I'm still like it's not always easy and not natural for me, but just kind of like getting that out there, it's always nice.
Yeah, oftentimes like when I coach others, I always tell people to be resourceful. And one thing I realize is oftentimes people think being resourceful is a status. It's like a stage, like it's a state of being. Like I'm already resourceful, so I'm resourceful. But it's actually more of a skill or a mindset, right? If you like everyone, no matter where you are in life, you can be resourceful. It's first like identify all the possibilities. Even just the internet itself is a great resource, right? But knowing how to research, knowing how to change your own mindset to find unique, creative ways to problem solving, these are a way of being resourceful, basically.
Yeah.
I resonate so much with everything that y'all said, especially with what Shunan say about just do it, because I think this is how Coffee Project started. We just embrace the just do it spirit. But another bigger component to it's the just do it spirit for us It's actually, we're very passionate about the industry, like the entire specialty coffee industry. This cherry, this liquid, this people who's doing around it. Because like what you say, we constantly have to just troubleshoot one problem after another. How do you keep yourself motivated if you're really not interested or passionate enough to actually do the things that you're doing? So that actually keeps me going every day. Because I wake up with the mindset like, what do I need to solve today?
I completely agree. I feel like
All day.
like at least for us, like like Lazy Sundays, we have 4 cafes, and I feel like something always breaks down, and it's always one after the other, and they always come in clusters. So yeah, I think sometimes I feel like I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna have a breakdown, but it's just going step by step and like getting it through. But if you're not passionate about it, it's really hard to get through that, because it's
Right.
not just like, you know, like a 9 to 5 where you can check out your brain, or like clock out, or kind of be removed from kind of the work that you're doing. It's really 24/7, and even in your dream, or yeah, in my dreams. So yeah, you really need to be passionate about it.
Yeah, I call that the entrepreneur mindset. You know, like you just basically wake up, and honestly, your goal, like when people look at us, they're like, "Oh yeah, you make coffee, right?" We're like, "No, no, no, we solve problems. Whatever problem comes, we solve
Yeah.
it."
Yes.
That's the entrepreneur. Yeah, and just
I like that.
I think
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, like passion is what makes us stick with it, right? So going back to trusting yourself with the ability to solve the problem. If the problem rises and you immediately back away from the problem, then that means you're not passionate enough about this project you're about to go into, right? But if you're passionate enough, then it's about having conviction, right? It's about like you know that you will get there. You know that this will work. And whatever issue that arises along the way, you know that okay, I just need to resolve this, and then I'll still be on the right path. It's a conviction, and it just has to happen. And I think this is also one's confidence will come through is that as in your process of doing this, not only as we're solving problems, then the similar problem rise again. We're like, oh, we're experienced at this. I know what to do. But also you will have just a general confidence about yourself because you just know that even if it's an unfamiliar problem, you will still be able to resolve that. And Tammy, I think, like you said, sometimes you feel like you're about to have a breakdown, but you don't. I think that's a great entrepreneur skill, right? Is that oftentimes when there's not a real problem or when there's just like maybe just like phantom of problems, we might have anxiety and such a waste of energy. But when there's a real problem, what happens is that our energy actually gets focused. And then like amazing abilities and the skills that you didn't even know you have, all of a sudden it's all there, and then we're able to resolve the problem. So we don't break down when there's crisis. And I think many people who have considered starting their own business or embark on the entrepreneur journey, you must have recognized this in yourself. That's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think also to touch on something that Carol said, which I thought was really great, of not being afraid to ask questions. I also think the big thing is just remembering that like no one knows it all, so that's okay that you don't know something. I think it's a big step just to get over the fact that it's like, oh, but I'm supposed to know this, or oh, I'm supposed to be able to do this. If I own my own business, I have to be able to do this or that. And it's like, it's okay if you don't. There are people that do, that can tell you, and then then you can pass that along. But I think that, not being afraid and shamelessly asking questions or asking for help to whoever may or may not have answers for you, is a very comforting aspect of, any type of job.
And here I also want to offer some like real resources out there. I think every at least in New York City, every borough has a chamber of commerce. Then they're a great resource that can offer help. There's small business services that can offer
offer some free help as well in terms, especially helping you navigate regulations and things like that. And there are probably lots of nonprofits and more focused help organizations around as well. I know as Asian, we have Asian American Business Development Center. Like these are all great resources that if you have questions, definitely go and ask. But still, don't let any challenges they might in their effort trying to help you recognize some of the challenges and problems you might have, don't let any of that deter you, right? So just moving forward and only use them as resources to help you move forward, not to scare you away, I guess. So I mean, there's a saying in the startup world, like the dream, the team, and the money. So the dream is what help us going. That's the fuel, right? That's the focus. And then the team, obviously, we, like Cynthia said, we cannot do everything ourselves. And the team is not just your core team, it's the greater team even beyond that as well. In a lot of ways, at least in Keyjunk's experience, I feel like a lot of our customers can even be our extended team because they have offered us great help along the way. And then the money. I mean, the money, like, but for most small business, I think when you're first starting, it's probably much less money than you think is needed, right? And then we're all in retail. So that means we have plenty of opportunity to generate cash flow, which by itself is a pretty healthy business model, just in the bulk, right? Especially in comparing to some other businesses you might consider getting into. But great thing about food and beverage is that it's relatively low startup capital and a great cash flow.
And never underestimate Craigslist. I found my first cafe on Craigslist.
Did you Oh, nice.
I cafes on Craigslist.
I bought a lot of my equipment on Craigslist. It's a weird situation, but it all works.
It works.
Well, my last question, which actually you guys are all already talking about, which is great, was what's some of your favorite resources? And I guess Craigslist is one, and then some of those other great organizations that Shunan mentioned. But if anyone else has any resources of all things food, food related, if people are interested in learning more, I know everyone here kind of has their own classes as well, so I'm going to link all that stuff down below. But if you guys have any last kind of like resources or anything that you're just like, hey, if you're looking to get into food, like you got to check this out.
Just
Instagram? Yeah.
Google.
Yeah. Instagram has really become a big,
but also kind of like your local markets, I think. Like, I feel like for food, I think that's kind of like where a lot of my inspiration comes from. And also like just being outside and like checking out different businesses and like not necessarily in your field, just everywhere. And I think a lot of the inspiration comes from there.
Yeah, I think it's also the resources in different aspects, right? There are resources that's related with the operational aspect of your business. And I do think the internet is a great resource. And we have resources on the creatives and marketing and the social media, and then probably newest articles about these different social media platforms is a great resource. And then is resources about the technical aspect of your industry. And that my personal preference is always to probably read books, just because that's your expertise and you probably do want to dive deeper into it, or seek professional venues for in-depth studying, like, you know, going to a coffee project, get certified. If it's a subject matter that's academically being researched, then you might want to get into those as well. So I think that's different aspects of the resources, right? And then there are just like general business help, regulations, things like that. And then that's where I think small business services is a great help
It's
too.
a huge one, yeah.
I know, like in New York City, there's so much to navigate. So having a complete list so you don't miss a point that you need to be compliant with, but you didn't know there is there. Because I don't know, like I feel like none of us will be great at bureaucracy, but whoever designed the rules apparently are more creative, and there's so many things to watch out for. So of like, oh, I didn't know that this is also a thing they want us to get regulated with. So
That's a big anxiety of mine. It's like, what if I failed? What if I forgot something?
Right.
I know.
I kind of rediscovered the library this year because I hadn't used it in a while. I read a lot, but I haven't been going to the library. And this year I was like, I need to increase my business knowledge a little. And I want to learn about lean processing and taxes more. And I just went crazy at the library, and it was really helpful. I mean, they're like big books, and sometimes I fall asleep, but it's just been good to be like, oh, okay, this is not that big of a deal. There's a book I can read about this, to make sure that I have everything in line.
Yeah, the library is a great, especially free resource for sure. Yeah. Amazing.
You can get like a e-library card.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing.
Oh, really? Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. This has been a really fun hour. I feel like I've learned a lot. I hope people that are watching have taken some things away and that have learned. We're going to drop a bunch of links down below for where to find everyone, how to follow us on social. If anyone has any last comments or wants to say their little send-offs, please do. But this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to chat.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to talk with you.
Yeah. All right. Well, happy Women's Month, everyone. And yeah, we'll see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.